Time to put in the powder, and a few things I want to show you here. I use an electronic powder scale and trickler system, but one thing I noticed is those things are pretty precise equipment, and they're kind of sensitive to fluctuations in the electricity. I noticed that there sometimes will be some variations that happen when the AC turns on or the furnace is running or those sorts of things. So I bought one of these line conditioners. I got this from Amazon, Line R600. It's APC that makes this, and so this plugs in, and all of the electricity that comes out the other end has been conditioned. In other words, the voltage or the stream of electricity that comes out that's being fed into my electronic scale and electronic trickler is extremely uniform, and I end up with better loads that way. This is the back side of the line conditioner, and as you can see, I've got my electronic scale plugged into it. It's been plugged in now for about an hour and a half. I always let it sit plugged in for 1 hour. That helps to kind of settle the unit. That's actually recommended by RCBS, so I do that while I'm doing other things with the reloading process. These, as you noticed from our previous video, just came out of being primed, and so we're almost ready to start putting powder in. And I say almost because what we have to do is we have to calibrate this scale. So I have my little written instructions here, and I've already turned on and calibrated, letting it warm up and get a stable 0. This is a nice stable 0. If you look at this, it's 0, 0.0. Nothing's flashing, nothing's changing. So that's a very stable 0. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the calibrate button, and it asks me yes or no. Do you want to calibrate? Yes, I do want to calibrate. So I'm going to press the yes, and it's asking for the 0 weight, which means a clean platen here. And that's exactly what it is. So now I will press the calibrate button again, saying yes, this is the 0 weight. And now it says hold. So we're just going to wait for a little while for it to figure this out. And okay, there we go. It's already calibrated at 0. Now it's asking for 20 grams. This one here is a 20 gram weight. And so we place that there and press calibrate at 20 grams. It's telling us to hold again. Now it's asking for 50, so I remove the 20 and I add the 50 gram weight, and I press calibrate. Now I'm telling it to calibrate with the 50 gram weight. Again, it's telling me to hold, and it'll tell me one more time. Now we're going to put on 70 grams, so I make a little bit of room over there. Calibrate that. And since it's been warming up for a while, the calibration process goes really fast. If I had turned this thing on and right away wanted to calibrate with it, it could sit there and think about it forever before it actually finishes the hold process and asks for the next weight. The last step here is it asks again for 0, and we press calibrate, and it's double checking that. Comes back to a stable 0 at 0, 0.0, nothing flashing, nothing changing. We are now calibrated. The next step is where I'm going to add the electronic powder trickler to it. So I'm going to slide this thing into place. It's also RCBS. These things talk to one another wirelessly, so we've got to make sure that the little reception, the little ports here can see each other. And also we want to make sure that this is lined up with the platen. So I'm actually going to place this tray right here. It's about 120 grains. Okay, and I'm going to tare it. In other words, I'm going to 0 it right here, and it's saying tare. Now it knows that there's something in there that's at that weight. And now I'm going to return to a stable 0, 0, 0.0. I'm going to line this thing up pretty much in the center. Make sure that the little ports are in view of one another. There we go. And now I'm going to plug this one into the line minder as well. And what we get now, once we turn it on, is the scale light over here is blinking. I'm going to come back over here to the scale. I'm going to press the calibrate button again, but this time I'm going to say no, I'm not going to calibrate. PRNT, do I want to print? There's another function that I don't have for it. No, I don't want to print. Do I want to use trickler? It's saying trickler, yes, no, yes. I want to use the trickler. Now what we have is the scale light here is no longer blinking, it is solid. So now they're in communication with one another. I'm going to now take my powder. I use Varget hydrogen powder. This is extremely good powder. In fact, it's called an extreme powder, not because it's so good. Extreme powders mean that they are temperature compensated. So if we have if we have a given load shooting 1 inch high at 100 yards at 30 degrees Fahrenheit, it's going to shoot 1 inch high at 100 yards at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, at 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, as long as all other things are the same. And that's not always the case, because your barrels will be hotter or cooler or whatever. But the powder isn't going to be changing. And this is great powder. I'm going to take this, I'm going to pour it in, and sometimes a little bit will come through, that's okay. And some did. I'll put in plenty of powder. I'm not going to use this much for this batch of loads, but you want to make sure that you have plenty of powder so that you have a real consistent feed through here when you're actually loading your cases. Move that out of the way. I try to spill as little as possible. Put what came out back into the tube. And I'm going to close up my powder. And it's very good practice to only have one powder on your bench at one time. Double check it, triple check it, that is the powder for this load, so you don't make a mistake. If you make a mistake and you fire that thing off, it could literally be disastrous. For you, for the rifle, for the firearm, whatever, especially for you. It can be really, really bad. That is so important. So we now have the powder in the tube, and what I'm going to do is simply press calibrate for the trickler. This is where the trickler is going to be communicating, testing its communication with the scale, and it's going to calibrate. It's going to go for about 150, sometimes 200 and some grains before it figures out how this particular type of powder meters through. This is a cylindrical powder. It works just fine, and I see that it's kind of throwing it off to the side here, so I'm going to move it a little bit so it throws right there in the center of my tray. And as I said, it'll probably figure out its calibration at about 150 to 190 grains being trickled through. I'm at 137, 138 right now. Still thinking about it, it's calibrating, so that light is flashing. Once the calibrate light goes solid, that means it has calibrated and you are ready to proceed with your powder charges. There we go. Our scale and trickler are now calibrated. We see that the scale light is still solid on and the calibrate light is now solid. And it took 241.1 grains of powder, a little bit more than some other times, but that's fine. That's nothing wrong with that at all. So the calibration is finished. I'm going to dump this powder back into the tube, return to a stable 0 and check that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check that the scale light and the calibrate light are solid on, and then I'm going to key the powder charge in grains and tenths of a grain. Now I'm going to throw 25.0 grains of Varget powder into each of these cases. So to tell it to do that, I simply do 25.0. Even though it's a 0.0, you still have to enter it. So it has to be some point whatever, always entered. Then you press enter, and then you'll see that the memory light turns on. Now to dispense 25 grains, I'm simply going to click dispense. It'll take it, I don't know, 15 seconds. I don't even think it'll take that long to throw just 25 grains. Of course, the larger the charge, the longer it's going to take. There's two different metering tubes in here. There's a fast and then there's a slow, and they can run also at a different speed. So there we go. It says 25.0. It was blinking for a little while. Now it's a stable dot right there between the 25 and the 0. That means it's done. The memory, everything's still on, and the dispense light is turned off. When it was actually dispensing, or if it's still working on it, that dispense light's going to be blinking. Don't pull this away until that dispense light goes off, otherwise it'll just start throwing powder all over the place. Take my funnel, lift this off, and I'm going to drop 25 grains in, and I like to wiggle that a little bit to make sure that I don't have any powder sitting on the rim of this funnel, because if I lift it off and I've had a little bit of powder in there, I'm going to dump powder all over the place, and I don't know where that stuff went, in which case I'm dumping powder back out and starting over again. The next part, and this is important, is to move that case from this side unloaded over to that side which is loaded. You don't want to put a double charge in. Another little step I always do is when I get all, in this case 30 cases loaded, I'm going to take a nice flashlight and I'm going to look down inside and make sure that visually each one looks like it's filled about the same. That's a great check for double charges. I've never had that happen, and probably because I'm being so careful with the loading process. So I can place this back over here, wait for a stable 0, press dispense. Notice the dispense light is blinking. That's working on it here. I got about 18 grains, 19, 20. Thrown real quick. Now it changed to the slower trickler. And it'll get real slow here in just a second. There we go, 25.0. Dispense. Move it over. That's the process. I'll repeat this the rest of the 28 more times, and then we'll do the inspection for the powder charge, and then go back out and put the bullets in. So here we have 25.1 grains, and what we're looking for is 25.0 grains. What do you do in this sort of situation? Well, all I do is take this and I'll take out a kernel or two, just a couple kernels, put it back on the scale, see where it's at, let it stabilize again, and there we go. That's exactly it. I can put those kernels back into the tube, and that's a done deal. The other thing is, how do you know how much to put in? Well, what I use is I go to either Hodgdon's website, since that's Hodgdon powder I'm using. That's just Hodgdon.com. Has it right there on the powder container, Hodgdon.com. I'm using Nosler. I will be using Nosler bullets. So I can go to Nosler's website, see if they have something. You can buy the Nosler, the Barnes, the different name brand of reloading manuals, but it is very important to make sure that you're using the right powder charge, the right recipe for this, and don't just start guessing, or somebody told me this is what I'm supposed to do. So this is all a load developed by Hodgdon, and I'm just following it right along. This is actually minimum charge for this load, and it works very, very well in this rifle that we're using.